Thousands of listeners across the nation rely on Garden Variety to grow everything better. And we rely on listener support to sustain our little garden of knowledge. You can help Garden Variety flourish with a gift today. Donate now at ipr.org/donate.
This is Garden Variety, a horticulture podcast from Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm Charity Nebbe. We all know that insects are essential for a healthy ecosystem. We also know that the plants in our landscape create habitat for insects. But when insects damage our beloved plants, it can be hard to keep things in perspective. And then there are those invasive insects that can truly be destructive. This hour, we'll get some advice on how insects and landscape plants can peacefully coexist from a horticulturist and entomologist who get along very well. Jeff Isles is a professor of horticulture at Iowa State University. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Charity. Good morning.
And Laura Isles is also here. She's an entomologist and director of the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center. Hello, Laura.
Good morning, Charity.
It is wonderful to have both of you here and the two of you on together. I don't think we've done this before, have we?
This could be a first.
I think it is
and
a
last.
first. We'll find out. All right. So I said in the introduction that we all know that insects are essential for a healthy ecosystem. I suspect that both of you could probably give me several examples that demonstrate that we don't all fully understand that. But that seems like a basic understanding that we should start with. Laura, do you want to make the case for insects?
Of course. And being an entomologist, I love insects and they're amazing. But, the practical side is pollination is the obvious one that first comes to mind is plants. All the flowering plants are, many of them dependent on insects to actually move that pollen to maintain their diversity, to reproduce. Insects, there's also a lot of predatory insects that feed on plant pests. We've got the lacewings and the lady beetles that are feeding on the pest caterpillars that eat our plants. This doesn't sound like a good argument because I'm just talking about insects eating other insects, but I'm going to throw it in there. And then there's just things like insects moving around seeds, ants and things moving seeds around, and then just breaking down dead plant material, just part of the ecosystem. So, we wouldn't have an ecosystem without all those insects doing their jobs out there.
Right. They really make life on this planet possible in many ways. Is that an overstatement?
I do not feel that's an overstatement. I don't know what life would look like without just millions upon millions of insects and all the different species fulfilling all their little niches. They really are very important.
And yet, when we put plants in our landscape and we are creating habitat for insects, we also, many of us, place those plants so carefully. They are chosen so carefully. We have this ideal of how we want them to look and grow. And Jeff, sometimes we run into an insect barrier when we have those ideals, don't we?
We do. And I have to admit that Laura's opened my eyes to the benefits of insects. And so, there's only a few that really cause us problems. Keep in mind that our woody landscape plants live in a tough neighborhood. There are insect problems, there are disease problems, there's cold, there's heat, and so there's lots of things that impinge upon our landscape plants. And thankfully, there's only a few bad characters out there that have caused this trouble. Of course, emerald ash borer being the one that we're very familiar with right now. But I think we have learned to live together in relative harmony, and that's a good thing because I love insects. I don't love them when they come in the house, but I do love them in the yard. They're what makes the yard complete.
And before we talk about, emerald ash borer is an invasive insect, and we've lost thousands of ash trees in this state because of it. And so that's kind of a unique case. But before we move on to invasives that are they're part of an ecosystem somewhere, but they're not part of the ecosystems in our state. Laura, we do have these insects that people just tend to find ugly or gross and just have very little tolerance for. I suppose that gets us into some controversial territory. I remember somebody calling into this show. They were planting milkweed to support monarchs, and then they were upset because there were aphids on their milkweed. So that's That's kind of a more difficult conversation. There are some of those insects we love and some we just don't like.
It is. And I think that was, I mean, I grew up just always loving insects, and it was kind of a surprise to me as an adult, and then certainly through extension, to learn that a lot of people just don't like insects, which is okay. I understand, but I think a lot of it's like we don't understand the insect. And so usually when you can kind of explain why the insect is there, why it's basically harmless, why we can't grow milkweeds and exclude everything but monarchs. I mean, people understand, but yeah, I couldn't. Insects just defy us. They don't stay where we want them. They don't go away when we want them to. They do come in our house when we don't want them. I mean, they're a little part of the world. They're doing their own thing. I think that's why I personally love them, because they're out in our yard. They don't even really respond to us. They're just doing their own thing, and I love observing that. But I'm aware others are less interested in just observing insects.
Well, and Jeff, you brought up the emerald ash borer. And as I said, I mean, this is an invasive. We have lost thousands of ash trees because of it. I mean, sometimes we do have an insect move into a new territory where it really can be devastating.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate introduction. Of course, we don't clearly know why it got here or how it got here, but it shows up in Detroit in 2002. And now we don't have many ash, at least our native ash, left in the landscape. So it is a shame. And not that I'm going to rush to the defense of insects, but I think they get blamed for a lot of things that they're not responsible for. People will often complain about ants or carpenter ants around trees, and they're really not doing any damage to the tree. So let me go on record, Charity, by saying that the insects are unfairly targeted sometimes. But emerald ash borer certainly was a classic case, and it's helped us learn that lesson again, that plant species diversity is always the way to go.
Right. I mean, that's an important lesson, although I think it's also important to point out that the emerald ash borer didn't get here on its own. That's really a human problem as opposed to an insect problem, right?
Right.
Yeah, I was going to rush to the defense of emerald ash borer. It was probably woodfowl. I mean, they didn't plan it. And, I always picture those, females and flying out from wherever they were introduced in Detroit, and just, here's our host ash trees. It's the same host that they were always using. And it just worked. They reproduced well and populations built. And, in their way, they are very successful emerald ash borer, but we see the downside of it. But I always take the insect point of view of all situations, and they were very, very lucky.
But imagine being those first few insects being dropped into this new environment. It's like being dropped into a golden corral.
Right.
I mean, just look at all of the opportunities. It must have been wild for them.
So much food, apparently no predators. Which is like a golden corral. I've never been in danger. So there are native borers, though, and native borers are in balance, can be in balance with the landscape. Although, I mean, Laura, native borers can even be found in places where they can be destructive. Tell me how a native insect can become a problem.
Right. So it comes down a lot to the trees. So trees have defenses. We all see bark and hairs on leaves. Trees have ways of, preventing borers that way. And they also have responses that they can do. Once the insect starts feeding, the tree is quite an amazing organism, and it senses that the insect's feeding, and it releases chemicals that will kill the insect. It can, sap that can drown the insect. So trees are not, they seem kind of passive, but they're not. They really are experiencing the environment, and they're fighting back. And so when a tree is healthy and in a good environment, it will fight back, and it can, really reduce the survival of any insects attacking it. And what happens is when, a tree comes into the urban environment or environment outside its range, and the tree is stressed, it's a little parallel to humans. Like, it can't respond. Like, when we get stressed and we're not getting sleep, then we pick up that virus a little more easily. So trees are similar that way. And so those native insects who normally wouldn't be able to successfully attack are able to. And, we talk about bronze birch borer a lot here in Iowa, which is very closely related to the emerald ash borer. again, not a problem, but birch are stressed, and this insect that's native just takes advantage of that.
So is there a lesson there, Jeff, for those of us who are planting trees in an urban environment that may be more vulnerable to their natural, I'm going to use the word pests, and even though I think we're trying to get a little away from that, but that makes them more vulnerable.
Well, Laura said it all. I mean, the word stress is one that we throw around a lot, but if you bring a paper birch down from the North Country, plant it in Des Moines, and subject it to heat, to drought, to whatever, they don't perform well. And again, when you have a stressed white bark or paper bark birch, it seems to invite problems, especially from the bronze birch borer. So the lesson, again, is to choose species and cultivars that are well adapted to the area, and better yet, choose birch that show natural resistance to the bronze birch borer in this case. So river birch in general show very good resistance to bronze birch borer. Paper birch, not so much. And so if you live in the UP of Michigan, go ahead and plant paper birch, and you'll have a much better shot at having it live a long life than if you plant one down here. Again, choosing plants for the landscape is not just choosing things off a menu. There is method to the madness.
So, Jeff, I'm hearing from you that being married to an entomologist has opened your eyes and mind and broadened your patience for insects in your life. Do you feel like you've made all the movement there, or is there some give and take?
No. Laura has become a plant geek. In fact, it's alarming how much she has embraced woody plants, especially garden conifers. In fact, we travel around to nurseries. We go to conferences. It's really kind of embarrassing the way that she has crossed over. So, no, we've met.
And how do you feel about crab apples, Laura?
We had one crab apple in our yard, and it got rabbit damage, did not perform well, and Jeff was the one that yanked it out. So, and the remaining crab apple is one that I love, but Jeff is also looking to yank that one out because it's not up to par.
Oh, my goodness, the dirty truth. All right. Laura Isles is director of the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center. She is an entomologist. Jeff Isles is a professor of horticulture at Iowa State University. For more gardening information and tips, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Find out more at iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. Garden Variety is a production of Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension. It's produced by me, Erin Stile, Caitlin Troutman, and the Iowa Public Radio talk show team. For more garden goodness, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Just go to iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time.